Assalamu alaikum to all. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Dr. Osama bin Shaheen, and as you all know, we are discussing the module of uro-oncology, and today I will be discussing the radiology and pathology of different type of renal masses. This is the outline of today's presentation. We will be discussing the radiology and pathology of these benign and malignant renal masses one by one. First, starting with the renal cyst. Renal cysts are the most common benign renal lesion. 70% of the renal cysts are asymptomatic. They can be solitary or multiple. They can be unilateral or bilateral as well. Risk factor for renal cyst formation include age, male gender, hypertension, renal insufficiency. Renal cysts can occur sporadically, or they can be associated with familial syndrome like autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease and autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease. The importance of renal cysts lies in the fact that there are higher incidence of RCC associated with these cystic diseases. So most of the renal cysts are diagnosed incidentally. They can be imaged through a variety of the technique including ultrasonography, CT and MRI. The ultrasound characteristic of simple renal cysts include a smooth wall, a fluid-filled cyst with having no internal echoes with posterior wall enhancement, as you can see in this image. The hallmark of simple cyst on CT and MRI is the absence of contrast enhancement, and this is the very striking characteristic of benign cyst.
Is there an enhancement in the simple cyst or not?
No.
No renal enhancement.
No renal enhancement. Absence of enhancement. So in 1986, Morton Bosnick is a scientist who devised the classification system of a cystic disease on the basis of CT. So which are after some modification in 2005. Now the Bosnick classification of renal cyst have 5 classes, and the importance of this Bosnick classification is that on the basis of these cystic classification, we can estimate the risk of malignancy associated with cyst. So in the class 1 cyst is basically a simple cyst with hairline thin wall and that does not contain any septa, calcification or solid component. The incidence of malignancy in class 1 cyst is 1.7% and no therapy or follow-up is required. This is the class 1 simple cyst having very thin wall, no septa, no calcification and absence of contrast enhancement. The risk of malignancy is very less, 1.8%. The class 2 cysts may contain few hairline thin septa and fine calcification. They are less than 3 cm and also does not enhance with IV contrast administration. The incidence of malignancy is 18.5% and no therapy or follow-up is required. This is the class 2 cyst having fine calcification and thin wall and does not enhance with intravenous contrast. Type 2F cysts may contain multiple hairline thin septa and minimal smooth thickening of their wall, and also it does not show any contrast enhancement. But the incidence of malignancy is 18.5%, and in 2F cyst, repeat imaging is advised to assess for increase in size and change of radiographic characteristic. This is the Bosnick class 2F cyst, and you can see there is a multiple septa and few thick wall. It is a thick wall and containing multiple septa. Now the class 3 is the indeterminate cystic masses that have irregular thick wall or septa in which contrast enhancement is present. So in the class 3 cyst, there is contrast enhancement is present and the risk of malignancy is 33%, you can see, which is quite high, and excision or ablation is advised in class 3 cyst. This is the class 3 cyst. You can see there is a multiple septa and showing calcification as well. The class 4 cysts are clearly malignant cystic mass that have all the criteria of above 3 cysts and also enhancing soft tissue component. The risk of malignancy is 92.5% and excision or ablation is required. So these are the clearly malignant cystic masses. This is the class 4 cyst having enhancing solid component, and these are clearly malignant masses. And this is the gross examination having bivalve class 4 renal cyst, which is malignant. Now coming to the oncocytoma. Oncocytoma are the benign lesion, but the striking characteristic of oncocytoma is that these are enhancing renal mass. Most of the benign cysts are non-enhancing, but oncocytoma is characteristic of being enhancing renal mass. Up to 25% of renal mass smaller than 3 cm represent oncocytoma, making them a challenging diagnostic entity. On gross examination of oncocytoma, they have mahogany brown surface similar to the appearance of normal parenchyma with a central scar. This central scar is a characteristic of oncocytoma. They originate from the intercalated tubular cell of the collecting tubules. On microscopic examination, they are eosinophilic because of high mitochondrial density and nest and tubular structure. The nuclei tend to be round and regular with extremely rare mitotic figures. Interestingly, oncocytoma show perirenal fat invasion and renal vein invasion. That carries a very important prognostic significance in RCC, but not in oncocytoma. And it is not interpreted as an aggressive pathology. Oncocytoma is a benign entity. Now, immunohistochemistry. Whenever there is uncertainty in the diagnosis, we can apply some immunohistochemical marker to differentiate different type of renal masses. So, whenever any morphological variant are seen, like papillary structure or compacted nestic architecture, SIUT recommend the use of immunohistochemistry to differentiate oncocytoma from malignant tumor. Whenever there is diagnostic dilemma between oncocytoma and chromophobe tumor, we can apply cytokeratin 7. Cytokeratin 7 is absent in oncocytoma, whereas in chromophobe RCC tend to be diffusely positive. So this tumor marker can be, this immunohistochemical marker can be helpful. Now on imaging, the definitive diagnosis of oncocytoma is typically post-operative. On imaging, hypervascularity and central scar on axial imaging suggests oncocytoma as a diagnosis. But these alone are not insufficient for definitive diagnosis. The post-operative diagnosis is definitive. On IVP, oncocytoma appear as sharply demarcated, often large exophytic masses with enhancement during the nephrogenic phase. IVP is not routinely recommended, so it is a less well studied. On ultrasound, oncocytoma appear as well circumcised mass with echogenicity similar to the rest of the kidney. Occasionally on ultrasound, a central scar may be visible. On CT, they tend to be large, well demarcated tumor at presentation. On plain CT, if they are less than 3 cm, they show homogeneous attenuation. If more than 3 cm, they show heterogeneous attenuation. Perinephric fat stranding may be present due to edema. Calcification may be present. On contrast examination, the small tumor may enhance homogeneously, while large tumor, the enhancement is heterogeneous. The central stellate non-enhancing scar is absolutely present in 1/3 of the cases. These are the oncocytoma, and this is the central stellate scar, which is characteristic of oncocytoma. On MRI, typical characteristics include on T1 sequence, they appear hypointense compared to renal cortex. On T2, they appear hyperintense compared to renal cortex. The central stellate scar appears as hypointense on T2 image. On T1 contrast gadolinium enhancement, they show homogeneous enhancement. Angiography is rarely performed, and angiography they appears spoke wheel pattern. What is spoke wheel pattern? Spoke wheel pattern is actually the peripheral circumferential enhancing vessel that gathers toward the center of the lesion, which is characteristic of oncocytoma. But it is not specific, it can also be seen in RCC. Microaneurysm have occasionally been reported. Angiomyolipoma. Angiolipoma is another very important entity, and it's a benign renal entity, and as the name suggests, it's composed of 3 structures. The angio, the blood vessels in the angio, the myo, the smooth muscle, the spindle cell muscle, and lipo, the adipose tissue. These are the 3 entities which is present in the angiomyolipoma. They can occur sporadically, or they can sometimes be associated with genetic syndrome like tuberous sclerosis and lymphangioliomyomatosis. The prevalence is 0.13% in general population, and they have a female predominance with a peak in the 4th and 5th decade. Pathology. Angiomyolipoma arise from the perivascular epithelioid cell, and they are characterized as PEComa, perivascular epithelioid cell tumor. On gross examination, they are well circumcised with a tan, pink, or yellow surface depending on the fat content. There are 2 histological types, the typical or the triphasic, and the atypical or the monophasic or the epithelioid AML. This epithelioid AML is very important. because in epithelioid AML the fat component is less and the epithelioid component is very abundant. And any atypia within the epithelioid cell, presence of mitotic figure and necrosis are common, and they suggest an aggressive course. This is the classical histological side of angiomyolipoma, and you can see it has vessel component, it has fat component, and it has spindle cell component. It shows all the three entities. So immunohistochemical marker can also be applied on AML, because on AML the differentials include sarcoma, specifically fibrosarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, and RCC. So these immunohistochemical markers are very important. In relevance to the angiomyolipoma, the spindle cell have melanocytic features and therefore HMB4 and melon A. These are the important markers which are positive in angiomyolipoma because of the presence of spindle cells. AML, as I previously mentioned, it is common in female, so they also show estrogen beta receptor, progesterone receptor, and androgen receptor, which may explain their female predominance. Now coming to the imaging. On ultrasound, angiomyolipoma appear as hyperechoic, located in the cortex with posterior acoustic shadow, which is similar to RCC. So ultrasound is a less reliable in the diagnosis, of course. When they are associated with tuberous sclerosis, they can be so numerous that the entire kidney can be affected, and it appears as echogenic with loss of corticomedullary differentiation. Contrast enhanced ultrasound is sometimes performed in patients with renal failure, which will be discussed in the later slide. And on contrast enhanced ultrasound, they on the periphery they enhance, and in the central they are decreased enhancement as compared to normal cortex. CT. The characteristic feature of angiomyolipoma in the CT is the presence of intralesional fat. And it has a Hounsfield unit of -15 to -20, and it is very diagnostic of angiomyolipoma. On MRI, on T1 and T2, they are hyperintense enhancement on gadolinium administration. Although the diagnosis of angiomyolipoma can be confidently made on imaging in most circumstances, but sometimes when there is fat poor angiomyolipoma or fat containing RCC or liposarcoma, it represents a diagnostic challenge. When fat poor angiomyolipoma is considered, we can consider of percutaneous biopsy to be sure of the diagnosis. Approximately 4 to 14% of angiomyolipoma do not contain any identifiable fat and appear similar to RCC. In that case, MRI may be helpful. Wunderlich syndrome. Wunderlich syndrome is a very important entity associated with angiomyolipoma. What happens is that Wunderlich syndrome is a rare condition in which a spontaneous non-traumatic renal hemorrhage occurs in the subcapsular or perirenal space or the retroperitoneal space. And angiomyolipoma show this Wunderlich presentation. So the classical presentation is a length triad, which include acute flank pain, flank mass, and hypovolemic shock. Patient can present with hypovolemic shock whenever there is a bleeding into the angiomyolipoma, which is an emergency. So this is the image of the Wunderlich syndrome, and you can see there is a hemorrhage into the renal mass, and in this image angioembolization is performed. The next one is the papillary adenoma of the kidney. In 2004, WHO defined papillary adenoma is low grade, grade 1 to 2, well circumcised, cortical lesion measuring less than 0.5 centimeter. They are very small tumors. The incidence increase with age, male sex, end-stage renal disease, acquired renal cystic disease, sporadic RCC, and hereditary papillary RCC. Papillary adenoma of the kidney is being considered as a precursor to papillary RCC. So it is very important in that context. On pathology, the cells are uniform but with benign nuclei and arranged in tubular papillary or tubular papillary structure, which is very similar to papillary RCC. In addition, the papillary adenoma of the kidney also show staining for A-methyl acyl CoA racemase positivity and cytokeratin changes such as trisomy 7 and 17, which is present in papillary RCC as well. So it's very important that this papillary adenoma of the kidney can with the passage of time present with papillary RCC. Because papillary adenoma are less than 1 centimeter in size, they are diagnosed on pathology as a concomitant finding with RCC and therefore require no further directed therapy. Although the diagnosis of papillary adenoma as a benign entity remains controversial, the changing paradigm of active surveillance of small renal masses support observation of these lesions whenever papillary adenoma is considered. Now, the metanephric adenoma. Metanephric adenoma is a rare benign epithelial lesion in the kidney and that has been described in the literature as case report. This is very rare tumor with representing only 0.2% of the renal mass. They can present at any age, although peak in the fifth decade, and is found more often in the female. Approximately half of the patients are diagnosed incidentally. The remainder experience symptoms such as flank pain, gross hematuria, a palpable mass, or polycythemia. And pathology, they appear as well circumcised tan brown masses that have been reported up to 15 centimeter. The cells are contained uniform cell with bland nuclei and cytoplasm. These are the uniform cell with bland nuclei and scant cytoplasm. When architecture were considered, they show different type of architecture including acinar, follicular, tuber-papillary, and glomerular structures. The immunohistochemistry, they stain positive for Wilms tumor protein 1 and CD57, and it is important in distinguishing them from papillary RCC. Papillary adenoma are notable for cytokeratin 7 and epithelial membrane antigen positive, whereas the metanephric adenoma are negative for these markers. So together, the description of histological and immunohistochemical method to differentiate metanephric adenoma from alternative diagnosis may suggest a role of renal biopsy when suspicion is high for these benign lesions. On imaging, metanephric adenoma may appear hypovascular with minimal enhancement and calcification. They show progressive but lower enhancement at each phase of contrast-enhanced CT. The enhancement is uniformly less than that of renal parenchyma, a finding in contrast to RCC, in which rapid hyperenhancement is common. In RCC, there is a rapid enhancement. In metanephric adenoma, there is progressive slow enhancement. Cystic nephroma is another rare benign tumor that occurs in youth, boys predominantly 2 to 3 years of age, and adult. In females, commonly in the 4th and 5th decades. On imaging, cystic nephroma appears as solitary central cystic masses with calcification, with extension into the collecting system and septal enhancement. In children, it is important to distinguish them from the Wilms tumor, which is often diagnosed from the surgical resection. On pathology, they appear encapsulated cystic lesion lined with cuboidal and hobnail epithelium. The immunohistochemistry in cystic nephroma is the show cytokeratin positivity in the epithelium, while the stromal element is strained for CD10, calretenin, inhibin, estrogen, and progesterone. The key finding that differentiates cystic nephroma from the Wilms tumor is the lack of blastemal and embryonal element in the resected tissue. Now, the mixed epithelial and stromal tumor, which is also known as MEST. MEST are the benign tumor of the kidney that are identified in the perimenopausal women, often with a history of estrogen replacement with a peak incidence in the 5th decade. In men, they have been reported after long-term hormonal deprivation for prostate cancer. The importance in this MEST are there has been malignant transformation in them. This transformation has been observed in the stromal element with sarcomatoid feature, and poor clinical outcome are expected whenever there is malignant transformation. On imaging, MEST appears as complex cystic masses such as Bosniak class 3 and 4, very similar to RCC. On pathology, grossly they are identified with a measurable size of 6 cm, then encapsulated with solid and cystic component that often extend into the renal pelvis. On microscopy, they show cystic component. There are very multiple cysts you can see, with lined with cuboidal or columnar epithelium. In these cystic, there is intersposed spindle cell or the muscle component, along with some collagen bands. The immunohistochemistry in MEST include estrogen and progesterone positivity in the stromal element, along with some mesenchymal markers like vimentin, CD34, and desmin. The epithelial component in these will stain positive for cytokeratin 7. Leiomyoma. Leiomyoma is a rare renal tumor of smooth muscle cell differentiation. They arise from the smooth muscle. They can arise anywhere in the urinary tract, but the bladder is the most common site. Whenever they are kidney, they can form in the multiple site. However, renal capsule is often described location. They arise from the renal capsule most commonly in case of kidney leiomyoma. They are more often found in women having 2:1 predominance and account for only 0.29% of the primary renal mass. On imaging, they arise from the capsule. So they appear as small exophytic masses that are hyperdense on non-contrast CT with hypoenhancement on intravenous contrast administration. They arise from the capsule, shows hyperdense on plain CT and hypoenhancement on contrast. Although the enhancement of leiomyoma is less than with traditional cell RCC, chromophobe RCC tend to be hypoenhancement similar to leiomyoma, making the radiological diagnosis difficult. On pathology, the leiomyoma appears as well-circumcised and firm tumor. The tumor can range in size and may have associated focal calcification and cystic degeneration. On microscopy, they show spindle cell, that is the muscle cell that form intersecting fascicle without evidence of any hypercellularity, pleomorphism, mitotic figure or necrosis. These are benign entity and only show spindle cell. The immunohistochemical staining, they show immunohistochemical staining positive for vimentin and smooth muscle marker like desmin and caldesmin. Leiomyoma can also stain positive for HMB4. Because angiomyolipoma is on the differential for leiomyoma, the angiomyolipoma also has a smooth muscle component and leiomyoma it's per se a smooth muscle tumor. The key differentiating factor in these tumors include the absence of melanin A staining and absence of adiposity. The AML has a fat component whereas the leiomyoma does not show any fat component. Now coming to the malignant renal tumors. Now the radiology of malignant renal tumor is very important because it is the strongest predictor of malignancy and metastatic potential. We perform radiology in every malignant renal tumor. We have several radiographic modalities, each with some relative strength and limitation. However, the current guidelines recommend the use of multi-phase cross-sectional imaging for the evaluation of suspected renal masses because we have large differential diagnosis and there is a large overlap between the benign and malignant renal mass. So cross-sectional multi-phase imaging should be done in every malignant renal mass. Now, why the radiology is so important? First of all, whenever a radiology for a malignant renal mass is performed, these parameters are very important to know. We should definitely know the renal mass diameter in craniocaudal, transverse, and anterior-posterior dimension, its morphology, involvement or juxtaposition to the renal hilum, vein, or collecting system, its enhancement characteristic, and associated features such as retroperitoneal lymphadenopathy and the presence and absence of abdominal metastasis. These are all features are very important for us as a surgeon because on the basis of these factors, we can devise our treatment strategy. We can opt for nephron sparing surgery versus radical nephrectomy. We can change our approach, for example, open versus minimally invasive surgery, and also the risk of surgical complication. So these all features are very important whenever we study a radiologic malignant tumor. Now the ultrasound. Ultrasound is a simple, straightforward, inexpensive modality that can only differentiate between the cystic and the solid renal mass. Ultrasound does not show us many information. We can only differentiate between a solid or the malignant or the cystic mass on ultrasound. It is not sensitive or specific as compared to CT or MRI. A renal mass that is not clearly a simple cyst on ultrasound should be evaluated further with multi-phase cross-sectional imaging. Whenever ultrasound show a solid component which is not a simple cyst, we should perform a contrast study. What is contrast enhanced ultrasound? Contrast enhanced ultrasound is basically a new modality in which microbubbles are injected intravenously and they show some enhancement on ultrasound. But it is a very contrast enhancing using microbubble is very expensive and almost cost as very similar to the contrast CT. So on contrast enhanced ultrasound using microbubble, they show heterogeneous hypervascular in the arterial phase with early washout in the delayed phase. This contrast enhanced ultrasound is only used in patient with renal failure or in patient with dialysis. So it is a evolving contrast enhancing ultrasound, and in future we can might be some useful, but not at present in Pakistan at least. IVP or IVU. IVU is no longer recommended in routine evaluation of renal mass. It is used historically. In historic feature on IVP, the malignant striking feature include increased tissue density, irregularity in the contours of the kidney, distortion of the collecting system. However, the lack of sensitivity and specificity for IVP for the detection of renal parenchymal tumor is less well documented. So IVP is almost obsolete and we do not perform routinely. Arteriography. Arteriography has a limited role in diagnostic evaluation of renal mass, and it is primarily reserved for patients who have renal artery disease. In equivocal cases, arteriography sometimes may be performed, and they may show the presence or absence of new vascularity and may help in the diagnosis of RCC. 20 to 25% of the RCC are angiographically indistinct, even though most of these tumors are not truly avascular and demonstrate modest degree of contrast enhancement on CT. Sometimes arteriography is used to confirm the presence or absence of new vascularity. Now the CT or the contrast CT. CT is the most widely used and studied imaging modality in renal tumor. The radiographic finding of RCC can be accomplished in most cases with a high quality abdominal CT and a routine chest radiograph. Multiphasic cross-sectional imaging provide the most accurate characterization of renal mass. They assess for the locally advanced feature as well as the intra-abdominal metastasis. On CT, whenever we find enlarged hilar or retroperitoneal lymph node 2 cm or more in diameter, they more likely are malignant lymph nodes. But this should definitely be confirmed after surgical exploration, because many smaller lymph nodes prove to be inflammatory rather than neoplastic and should not preclude surgical therapy. The enhancement of 15 or 20 Hounsfield unit is indicated of RCC unless proven otherwise. So whenever they show enhancement of 15 to 20 Hounsfield unit on contrast CT, it is RCC until proven otherwise. Now, what is the phases or the triphasic? We very commonly use the word triphasic. So what are the phases of a contrast CT? So the first one is the non-contrast CT, and on non-contrast CT we can show soft tissue. We can only assess soft tissue attenuation between 20 to 70 Hounsfield unit. Larger lesion may have some area of necrosis. Approximately 30% of the tumor demonstrate calcification. These are the findings we can assess on non-contrast CT. And the first one is the now the phase. The first one is the corticomedullary phase, which is also known as arterial phase. It is 25 to 70 seconds after administration of contrast. And on arterial phase, the RCC demonstrate variable enhancement. The small lesion may enhance homogeneously, whereas the larger lesion show enhance irregularly because of the presence of necrosis. So it is best for assessing vascular anatomy. This is the first phase. The second phase is the nephrogenic phase or the portovenous phase. It is 80 to 180 seconds after the contrast administration, and it is most sensitive phase for detection of abnormal contrast enhancement. The arterial phase shows the best contrast enhancement. Whenever there is abnormal contrast enhancement, we do it on the nephrogenic or the portovenous phase. The last phase is the excretory phase or the washout or delayed phase, as we know. So it is of less work, but it is important in assessing collecting system anatomy, especially if the patient is candidate for partial nephrectomy. We can assess if the tumor is invading into the collecting system. So washout or delayed or excretory phase may help us to find that. This is a classical on plain CT, and on the plain or non-contrast, we can see a solid mass arising from the lower pole of the right kidney, and after contrast administration, we can show that it is enhancing and also show heterogeneously in the center, and it is a classical RCC. Now, what to do if the patient has renal failure? This is a very important algorithm in patient in whom we want to perform a contrast CT, but the patient is in the renal failure. If we suspect renal mass and it is detected or suspected, if it is a complex cyst on ultrasound, this is an ultrasound. If it is a complex cyst or a solid mass, it can be a simple cyst. If it can be a simple cyst, we doesn't do anything, we just observe the patient. If it is a complex cyst or a solid mass, we must do a contrast study. Now, now we will ask the patient if he has any significant contrast allergy. If the patient has any significant contrast allergy, we will consider an MRI without contrast. We do not give him or her contrast. We simply do a plain MRI or plain CT. If the patient has no significant contrast allergy, we should check the estimated GFR first. If the eGFR is greater than 45, we are in a safe zone and we can perform a dedicated renal CT scan along with the contrast. If the GFR is between 30 and 45, then we will consider the peri-procedural hydration. We should hydrate the patient before and after performing the study. And if the eGFR is less than 30, that is in a renal failure, advanced renal failure, we will not perform a contrast enhanced study. Instead, we will perform a non-contrast or plain CT and MRI or without gadolinium, or we can perform contrast enhanced ultrasound. So this is the Mayo tumor thrombus classification. We encounter a lot of patients who have tumor thrombus. So Mayo proposed a classification system which not only describe the levels of tumor thrombus, but also tells us the surgical approach, how to gain control to the tumor thrombus. Mayo classifies the tumor into 5 levels. In level 0, the tumor thrombus is limited to renal vein or its tributaries. We can gain surgical control by simple renal vein ligation. In level 1, the tumor thrombus extends into the IVC, but it is less than 2 cm above the renal vein orifice. By milking of IVC tumor thrombus into the renal vein, we can gain control of this tumor thrombus. In level 2, you can see the tumor thrombus extend into the IVC greater than 2 cm above the renal vein orifice, but it is below the hepatic veins. So, in these patients, we gain control over the tumor thrombus by some mobilization of the liver, by clamping of the intrahepatic IVC, clamping of the infrarenal IVC. In level 3, the tumor thrombus extends above the hepatic vein, but it lies below the diaphragm. In that case, we have to do extensive mobilization of the liver, along with clamping of the suprahepatic IVC with the adjunctive veno-venous or cardiopulmonary bypass. Level 4 is the most dangerous tumor thrombus, and in this the tumor thrombus extends above the level of the diaphragm. And in that case, we have to involve a cardiothoracic surgeon with potential thoracotomy and open heart surgery. Now, what is bland thrombus? It is very important to know what is bland thrombus. It is basically non-malignant venous thrombus. That is, it is a normal DVT. It is very important in context of malignancy because sometimes the tumor thrombus and the bland thrombus coexist, and it is important for us to differentiate between these two entities. Bland thrombus form as a result of the abnormalities of the Virchow triad, that is the abnormal coagulopathy, the endothelial injury, and the procoagulant state. The remarking feature of bland thrombus on CT is that it has enhancement of 33 Hounsfield unit, whereas the tumor thrombus show enhancement of up to 81 Hounsfield unit. The treatment of bland thrombus is the anticoagulant therapy or the thrombolytic therapy. This is the image of a bland thrombus, and you can see there is less contrast enhancement. It is not a tumor thrombus. This is the TNM classification of the renal masses, where we are very well aware of these TNM classification. In T1, the tumor is 7 cm or less, confined to the kidney. The T2 tumor is greater than 7 cm, confined to the kidney. The T3 is the tumor extending to the major vein or perinephric tissue, but adrenal gland or gerota is not involved. In T4, the tumor invades beyond the gerotas and include the adrenal gland. The N0, no regional lymph node, and N1 is a metastasis in the regional lymph node. M0 is the no distant metastasis, whereas M1 is the distant metastasis. We will be seeing more of this TNM classification in our subsequent presentation when we will be discussing the management of renal tumors. Now, when we suspect a malignant renal mass in any patient, we should perform a detailed metastatic evaluation on that patient. And it includes a routine chest radiograph, systematic review of the abdominal, pelvic, CT or MRI, and LFTs. In patients who have elevated alkaline phosphatase, bone pain, and poor performance status, bone scan should be done to rule out bone mets. CT scan should not be routinely done. It is only done in patients who have pulmonary symptom or abnormal chest radiograph finding. Patient who with locally advanced disease, enlarged retroperitoneal lymph node, or significant comorbid disease may require more thorough imaging to rule out metastatic disease and to help in treatment planning. Now, MRI is not routinely used, but it is reserved primarily for patients who have locally an advanced malignant disease, equivocal venous involvement, or allergy to intravenous contrast material. The enhancement of greater than 20% with intravenous gadolinium contrast on MRI is highly suggestive of RCC. MRI, as we all know, is very good in delineating the soft tissue anatomy, so it is very helpful in differentiating tissue plane and for defining the extent of vascular involvement in many patients with locally advanced RCC. MRI is still the very important study in challenging cases and helps for surgical planning by assessing the anatomy of the tumor. A very harmful concern with MRI along with gadolinium is the potentially serious complication, nephrogenic systemic fibrosis. It is a very dangerous, it's a very harmful condition. Nephrogenic systemic fibrosis is seen in patients who are on dialysis with CKD stage 4 and 5 and significant acute kidney injury or patient receiving multiple doses of gadolinium contrast. A gadolinium contrast study should be limited to patients who have estimated GFR greater than 30. Molecular imaging. Molecular imaging is the evolving field, and it uses the cellular process and high affinity radiolabeled dye is injected into the system, and they provide the imaging. And for example, we have FDG PET, and it is used in variety of the malignancy, but it has a very limited role in RCC because of high level of visual conspicuity in the kidney and at the most common sites of metastatic disease. Another one is the System EB single photon emission CT SPECT, and it has shown a promising result in distinguishing renal oncocytoma and hybrid oncocytic chromophobe tumor from clear cell RCC, but it is in the experimental stage and it awaits large scale validation. It is not used routinely. Renal mass biopsy. Renal mass biopsy is another important armamentarium in our evaluation of the patient with renal masses, and the overall diagnostic accuracy is greater than 80%. The more traditional indication of renal mass biopsy includes suspicion of renal abscess or when RCC must be differentiated from metastatic malignant disease or lymphoma. So we will be discussing more of the renal mass biopsy in our subsequent presentation, but whenever we have any doubts or whenever there is any suspicion, we can perform renal mass biopsy. The complication of renal mass biopsy is quite low, but there is some risk of perinephric bleeding and pneumothorax, and that is very low, it is less than 1%, and needle tract seeding is also very rare when centrally located infiltrative renal masses are excluded. It is considered in patients who are potential candidates for a wide variety of the treatment options from observation to excision. On the basis of renal mass biopsy, we can decide we observe them or excise them as accordingly. Now coming to the our very important topic of renal cell carcinoma, the pathology of RCC. Most RCC are round to ovoid and are circumcised by a pseudocapsule of compressed parenchyma and fibrous tissue rather than a true histologic capsule. Unlike upper tract urothelial carcinoma, most RCC are not grossly infiltrative, with the exception of collecting the carcinoma and sarcomatoid variant. When they are bivalve, the RCC consists of yellow, tan, or brown tumor interspersed with fibrotic, necrotic, or hemorrhagic area. Few are uniform in gross appearance. These are some of the characteristics which we see on histopathology in RCC. Cystic degeneration is prominent in 10 to 25% of the RCC, and it have better prognosis as compared with purely solid RCC. Calcification can be stippled or plaque-like and is found in 10 to 20% of the RCC. The nuclear feature can be highly variable and are independent prognostic factor for RCC generally and for clear cell and papillary RCC in particular. Now the satellite lesions are very important. Satellite lesions are small and difficult to identify by preoperative imaging, intraoperative ultrasound or visual inspection, and they appear to be the main factor contributing to ipsilateral recurrence after partial nephrectomy. So the recurrences which we encounter after partial nephrectomy is most likely due to the satellite lesion. Grading. We have two grading systems for classification of RCC. One is the Fearman grading system and the other one is the WHO. Fearman grading system was used in the past, it is not used currently, but it grades the tumor into 4 grades. where grade 1 carries the best prognosis and grade 4 carries the worst. It classifies the tumor on the basis of nuclei, its size and shape, and nucleoli. In grade 1, the size of the nucleus is 10 micrometer, the shape is round and uniform, the nucleoli is inconspicuous or absent. In grade 2, the size of the nucleus is 15 micrometer, the shape is slightly irregular, and the nucleoli are evident at high power 400 magnification. In grade 3, the size is 20 micrometer, the nuclei is obviously irregular, and the nuclei are prominent, large at low power magnification. On grade 4, the nuclei are greater than 20 micrometer. The shape of the nucleus is bizarre, often multi-lobed, and the nuclei appear as heavy chromatin clump. This is the new classification of RCC on the basis of histopathology, and it is proposed by WHO and the ISUP, International Society of Urological Pathology, and has been validated for clear cell and papillary RCC and is recommended grading system for the RCC. This also divide into 4 graded. Grade 1 is when the nucleoli are absent or inconspicuous and basophilic at 400 magnification. Grade 2, the nucleoli are conspicuous and eosinophilic at 400 magnification and visible but not prominent at 100 magnification. In 3, the nucleoli are conspicuous and eosinophilic at 100 times magnification. Grade 4 is extreme nuclear polymorphism, multinucleate giant cell, and or rhabdoid or sarcomatoid differentiation. All RCC are by definition adenocarcinoma and they derive from the renal tubular epithelial cell. They show ultrastructural features such as surface microvilli and complex intracellular junction with normal proximal tubular cell. Chromophobe RCC and the 2 aggressive subtype of RCC, the renal medullary and collecting duct carcinoma, appear to derive from the more distal element of the nephron. Now, how we classify these RCC? RCC is a general term, and we have several subtypes of the RCC. So, since the 1990s, the histological classification of RCC has undergone several revisions. Traditionally, RCC was divided into 4 histological subtypes: the clear cell, the granular cell, tubulopapillary, and sarcomatoid. Now, as there are advances and there is technological advancement of molecular genetics, a new classification system was proposed by WHO in 2016. Classifies into 3 types, major types. The one is the clear cell, the next is the papillary, type 1 and 2, and the last one is the chromophobe RCC. So these are the 3 main subgroups, and all other are the modification or variety of RCC. So the primary histological subtype, we should, whenever we see histopathology, we should see the primary histological subtype and comment on the presence and extent of sarcomatoid differentiation. This is the classical clear cell RCC. It is the most common, 70 to 80% of the RCC. They gross examination, they appear yellow and highly vascular, containing the network of delicate vascular sinusoid interspersed between sheets or acini of tumor cell. On microscopic examination, we can see there are clear cell or granular and eosinophilic cell of mixed type. The clear cell are typically round or polygonal with abundant cytoplasm containing glycogen, cholesterol ester, and phospholipid. The white structure we can see in this pathology are basically the clear cell, which contain cholesterol, glycogen, and cholesterol esters. On CT scan, they are hypervascular lesion, heterogeneous due to necrosis, hemorrhage, cystic component, or calcification. The typical feature of clear cell carcinoma is a strong enhancement in the corticomedullary or the arterial phase. In this image, you can see in an enhanced CT, there is we can see solid mass arising from the kidney, and when there is a contrast administration, it shows very striking enhancement. On MRI, the clear cell RCC usually on T1 sequence iso to hypointense and T2 sequence hyperintense. Papillary RCC are the second most common subtypes, representing 10 to 15%. The microscopic examination revealed basophilic or eosinophilic cell arranged in the papillary or tubular configuration. You can see papilla are the finger-like projection or frond-like projection, and we can see there are multiple papilla in these 2 images. So these are basically the papillary RCC. The gross feature of papillary RCC include beige to white color with spherical boundaries and frequent hemorrhage. Multicentricity, which approaches 40% in many series, and they occur more commonly in patients with end-stage renal disease and acquired renal cystic disease. On Imaging, they appear homogeneous and hypovascular and therefore can mimic cyst. They can be heterogeneous due to the necrosis, hemorrhage or calcification. On MR, on T1 they are iso to hypointense, on T2 they are hypointense. The classical feature of papillary RCC, they are multifocal and they are bilateral, and it is seen in this type of RCC as compared to other type of RCCs. Chromophobe RCC these are the solid, sharply demarcated and sometimes slightly lobulated lesion. They can have central scar or spoke wheel pattern of contrast enhancement similar to oncocytoma. The enhancement of chromophobe RCC are often homogeneous and less intense as compared to the clear cell RCC. The enhancement is less as compared to the clear cell RCC. This is the pathological image, and we can see solid growth or nest of broad alveoli trabeculae, and they are composed of polygonal cell with hard or distinct cell border. The vegetable cell due to the cytoplasmic reaction. Now, urothelial carcinoma or the TCC of the upper tract, there are two pathological subtypes of the urothelial carcinoma. One is the papillary, which is broad base with many frond-like papillary projection. They are low grade and invasion beyond the mucosa is a late feature. They account for greater than 85% of the tumor. The next one is the non-papillary. Non-papillary are the sessile or nodular tumor. They are high grade and early invasion beyond the mucosa. This is the very invasive type of urothelial carcinoma, non-papillary. On the histological grade, there are three grades. Grade 1 is a well differentiated, grade 2 is moderately differentiated, and grade 3 is the poorly or undifferentiated. On ultrasound, urothelial carcinoma appear as solid, albeit hypoechoic masses located within the renal pelvis or a dilated calyx. TCC, which has squamous metaplasia or abundant keratin formation, may appear as renal calculus. And this is very important. On CT, they show soft tissue density of 8 to 30 Hounsfield unit with only mild enhancement. The enhancement is not as much as seen in the RCC. They are usually centered on the renal pelvis rather than the parenchyma. This is very important because the RCC appear from the epithelial cell, these in the cortex or the parenchyma, whereas the TCC arise from the renal pelvis or calycis. They range in size from small filling defect to large masses which obliterate the renal sinus fat. So one of the common causes of faceless kidneys. On MR, they appear isointense to renal parenchyma on both T1 and T2 weighted images. Following administration of gadolinium, TCC enhances but less so than normal parenchyma. So thank you. That's all.